Hi, welcome to another episode of Creating a Life That Nourishes Body and Soul. Today we're talking about connection and creating a life of intention, creating a life on purpose. And our interview today is Susan Sherayko. Susan has enjoyed a lengthy career in film and television production as a production manager, line producer, and executive in charge of production, simultaneously studying psychosynthesis. Thus, when a landslide destroyed her family's home, Susan used that experience as an inspiration to help others. She began guiding others to survive major setbacks in their lives and rebuilding to create a new vision that ultimately allows them to thrive. Susan authored the book Rainbows Over Ruins, available on Amazon, which tells the story of their recovery. Susan went on to become a three-time Daytime Emmy-nominated executive. She was executive in charge of production and was a line producer of the renowned show Home and Family on the Hallmark Channel, and is a member of both the Producers Guild of America and the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Susan is a certified life mastery consultant with the Brave Thinking Institute, a certified psychosynthesist, an empowered spiritual life coach, a life success consultant, a power habits coach, and an informer, an effective teacher and speaker, host and producer of two podcasts, Rebuilding Your Life, Moving from Disaster to Prosperity, and Train Your Brain to Claim Your Power. Most recently, Forum partnered with Susan to be a group facilitator, utilizing her experience with disasters and subsequent training to lead a peer support group on navigating disasters and rebuilding. Susan says, I have learned a faith-based system that empowers all of us to live the lives we love, overcoming adversity, to not only survive and rebuild, but to thrive. It can be summed up in one sentence. However, to walk it out is a continuous process filled with subtle nuances. Isn't that the truth? In her spare time, Susan enjoys writing and spending time with her family, horses, and dogs on her 5-acre ranch. Her home is in a small frontier town that they created after the landslide. Welcome, Susan.
Well, thank you for what a great introduction that is. How are you?
It's so good to have you here. As you can tell, Susan does a lot of things and has dealt with a lot of transitions in her life, which is why I'm very excited to talk to her about how to make those transitions, how to really not just deal with what happens, but be intentional about the things that come at us that we're not expecting. So, Susan, tell us a little bit about what brought you to this point.
Well, as you mentioned before, the landslide was really the catalyst for everything that happened. We had, we had our business, our lives were in process. We had moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. We were in Hollywood, and it was something where everything was just going according to Hoyle, the way it was supposed to be going, until one night it wasn't. And literally coming home from work to discover that a landslide had indeed come down from the mountain behind the house and gone right through the second floor window.
Oh my goodness.
And around the stairs and down into the living room. And the funny part about it is that when I opened my front, you couldn't tell from the outside. So I went right on inside the house to see mud all the way down the staircase, around the floor, and my dogs sitting on the sofa, wagging their tail to say, hi, Mom, and not getting into the mud. But it took time to recover from that. And I had, thankfully, a church that was very supportive, the Shadow Hills Church in Shadow Hills, California. And they pitched in to help me carry things out and rescue me from the mess. My husband was out of town. I've never been in a disaster like that. I didn't know what to do. And so it was a frightening experience, and my emotions were all over the place. It was a financial crisis. It turns out insurance does not cover landslides because they're too catastrophic. And so we couldn't get any help from FEMA or from the Red Cross because they weren't big enough. They don't do individual homes. They only do mass, crises. And so everywhere I looked, I was not finding any solutions. Oh, so it took a while. We had to find a place to rent. We had to stay with friends for about 6 weeks until we could find one. Then we had to move into that place with what we could rescue. It was just it was one thing after another on a regular basis. And it took about 18 months. And we finally were able to get a home of our own again and move in. And then I started to think about it. And I just kept asking, why were we able to recover and other people aren't? What's the secret? And that led me into coaching and working with a spiritual coach. And she was Sharon Wilson on the East Coast. And it was a wonderful thing. I became a coach myself, and I've spent all the time since then living sort of this dual life of being, a producer on one half of my life and a coach on the other half. And that's how I got there.
And that is just unimaginable to come up, especially when you couldn't see anything from the outside. It's like open the
Yeah.
door and surprise.
Yes, it's true.
I think it's important to point out too, though, that I mean, for you, it was an actual natural disaster.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about the word disaster that forces change upon us, it doesn't have to be a natural disaster. It doesn't have to be a landslide or a fire or a flood or things like that. There are lots of changes that are thrust upon us. Um, that
Absolutely.
the things that you talk about can help with all of that.
That's very true. It's Tracy, it is people, when people have things go awry in their lives, it's a disaster. So it could be illness, it could be divorce, it could be your children growing up and leaving you home, with an empty nest. It could be the loss of a job. It could be, having to rebuild anything that you really cared about. Or in the what's even more special is realizing that once you've gone through something that's that catastrophic into your personal life, you begin to dream of what you really want. You suddenly begin to look forward to all the things you've ever wanted to do, all the things you ever thought you could achieve or impact people with, impress people with, make a difference in the world. And it changes your focus in some way in order to recover from the experience itself.
That's interesting you bring that up because that's not something that you hear about.
Mm-hmm.
What we hear about is this was a disaster and oh no. And we hear about all the hard stuff and that it's life-changing, not in a good way. But to hear you talk about the possibilities that it opens up, that's something that not a lot of people are talking about.
I don't think a lot of people talk about it in life in general. This, this is this. There's that joke they tell where the farmer, um, you know, burns down, his barn burns down, and the neighbors come over and they, oh my, this is horrible. And he says, I don't know if it's good, I don't know if it's bad, but I know God's in charge of it. And then his son comes home and he's about to be inducted into the military, and they're all worried about it, but he falls down and breaks his leg. And in the course of breaking his leg, the military show up and they won't take him. So was it bad or was it good that he broke his leg? Because God was involved and he stayed home. So we are, we are not trained to think perspective, that it's all in your perspective. One of my mentors, Mary Morrissey, she tells a wonderful story of in her youth. She went to some sort of a counseling program and they told them to pause on judging a bad event because many good things may come of it. So when her husband lost his job and they were terrified, they had children to feed and all that, she wound up saying, okay, we're supposed to put a pause on this for 3 days. And if we haven't found something positive out of this in 3 days, then we can worry. And lo and behold, he began looking at what would it be like if I didn't have to do the job I was doing? What would I like to do? Where might there be someone who could use my services? And within 3 days, he had found that person and he was hired to a new job, much more to his liking. So, it really is perspective.
Yes, it is. And you touched on that earlier when you asked that wonderful question when you were in the midst of that and had gone through and kind of come out the other side, and you asked, Why were we able to recover and others aren't? So, what answers did you find to that?
I think that it's interesting to look back and say what was it that enabled us to do that. And if you read my book Rainbows Over Ruins, it is the story of the transitions.
Mm,
And I studied so much during that time. I studied secular authors who talked about job hunting, and I did spiritual work. I had i had made a major shift during that time in my spiritual life, so that I was answering questions and looking for spiritual guidance throughout the entire process. Uh, that was, I also learned about the importance of regular actions, consistent actions, working toward a goal, not being disheartened by not finding what I thought would be easy solutions, but finding alternate solutions that actually enabled me to utilize other people, work with them, help other people, and it allowed it to just lay out for me beautifully. What I did find, that we are all on a spiritual journey, and it's all processed through the dimensions of our lives. We have
mhm,
body, mind, spirit, we have emotions, we have a physical life that it's your body and your health and your well-being. We have our emotional life, which is love and relationships. We have the way we want to present in the world, our creative spirit. And then we have actually the joy of time and money freedom that's really important to us. And it's only when we bring all of those in balance that we are able to achieve the dreams we want. And that includes having a strong spiritual connection at that point. I think those are things that came out for me as being important. I don't know that I when I describe all the things I did, all the processes I went through, the actual tasks I did,
mhm.
they were exercises, living exercises that brought me forward.
Well, it's easy to say, just do small, regular things. That sounds very logical, and our mind goes, absolutely, that makes sense. But that's not an easy thing to do when
No, no,
the
it's
rug has
not.
been pulled out from under you, and probably all you want to do is just sit and not move.
I don't know about that, but it's when you let the world batter you and don't have any control over it, it's very defeating.
Mhm.
And that is the essence of saying intentional, that you want to take control. You want to prove that you are not going to be in this state forever. And that intention that you mentioned earlier is really important. I I have studied now with so many different trainers and teachers, and they have really impressed upon me a system. Have a system to work with, because it keeps you grounded in the process and enables you to build upon what you've done. Uh, Sometimes for me, I have a teacher who says it's the rigor of the work to keep your mind going in the direction you want it to go. It's the rigor to renew your mind. And they talk about renewing of the mind in the Bible all the time. It is a process in which you take the negative out and allow God's work to move in you. And although it's not, people don't talk about Satan all the time. It's sort of out of vogue today to use that. It's like, those are weird people. But when you read the language of the kingdom of heaven versus the earthly kingdom in which Satan has dominion, it really is important to keep renewing your mind, keep bringing it back to the heavenly kingdom and allow that to be your focus, not what the earthly realm is doing with money and physical things. So that's probably been the most important part of my life in more recent years, is to understand that rigor consciously and to have labels put on it. Like we have the phrase that I use most now is that you want to focus on vision, and you want to keep your mind on your vision, and you want to develop it as deeply and see it in your mind's eye and see what's happening in your vision, but not as if it's distant. You want to see it as if you're in it right now, that it's happening to you right this minute, so that you understand what it feels like, what it looks like. How are you who are you being? Not so much what you're doing, but who are you being? And bring it to that higher place. It's the level of truth. Mm-hmm. The earthly realm is not truth. It's all an illusion. It feels like truth. and that's where the hang up is, that you can't. It's so challenging to keep your mind on the vision in the future, with you there right at that moment, your future self, how to be your future self, and look back at your earthly self right now and point the direction, show the way to move forward. Great guidance from that. Traditionally, we would call that the Holy Spirit talking to us, but we do get guidance from the spiritual realm, and we can, if we listen and act upon it, it makes a huge difference. So the renewing of the mind, you have a vision, and as soon as you have it, paradigms kick in, and they tell you, who do you think you are? Why are you doing that? You don't know how to do that. You'll never be able to do that. And to stop and knock them out by replacing them with another kind of statement. A return to the vision of what it is going to be like, what it is now in that other place. Time isn't real. We live in a world of time and space because it was created that way, but heaven doesn't have that. Heaven doesn't have money. Heaven doesn't utilize money. It's not the method of exchange. So to jump our consciousness into a heavenly place where we see truth and come from truth, and replace all the negative thoughts that come into our minds with things that come from mainly from the Bible. A lot of people write wonderful stuff, and I would never negate that, but the Bible is the living word, and it is a place for us to go. So we have a vision, we have a renewed mind, that we keep our mindset positive at all times. If it goes down, we pick it up again. And then we have to say, okay, well, if I am doing this, what has to happen? What must happen? And start to look at the skill sets we need to develop. And those skill sets run the gamut. It's not just, the job skills, it's people skills, it's finance skills, not to ignore any part of life. Those things need to be in alignment. So we have a beautiful vision coming from truth. We have the right mindset, the right skill sets, which helps us to plan out a path, and then take the right actions in order to get to the right results. So there's no kidding that you do not just hold on to vision. Vision by itself is beautiful, but unless you're actually putting it into action, nothing will actually happen. I was reading in Exodus this week about Moses, and when he went to get, to take the Israelites out of Egypt, and God tells him to do it, and he doesn't know how to do it. So God gives him a stick. He gives him a stick, and he says, point it, and things will happen. And he does. And frogs appear, and gnats appear, and the river. What's the river? The great the Nile River.
Nile turns to blood. Yeah.
The waters fall apart, giving the Israelites dry land to cross it. And as soon as they get across, they come back, and the river is flowing freely again. So it's the stick, followed by action and words, saying the words. Aaron has to say the words. Moses has to say the words, combined with action, and to get the results. So that's become my sort of overarching process of, in the old days when they first started personal development, it was see, plan, do, review, and repeat. See, plan, do, review, repeat. Now we have, other teachers have different messages, but That's the one I'm currently focusing on for myself.
And so it and all of that ties in with then creating this system for yourself and doing those right actions, even no matter how small they are. If somebody's kind of stuck and they just can't seem to figure out what they can do, where they can start, what resources might you suggest for helping somebody get over that hump?
That uh, well, the first thing still is vision,
Hmm.
because we all reach that point where we don't know what to do, we don't know how to do it, and masterminds are very powerful because you are asking. Mary Marcy's system is very good for this, which is that you notice what you're noticing.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking about? Is it good or bad? And then notice your longings and your discontents. The longings are things you would love to have in your life. Your discontents are um, they're the things you don't want in your life, plain and simple. Right? So, what would you love? Keep asking yourself, what would you love? And then, what one thing could you do in a given period of time, 5 minutes, a day, a week, that would move you in the direction of what you would love? And ask that every day, and go in prayer, meditation, and ask for guidance. Guidance will come if you ask, and it will be specific. It will tell you, you could run a laundry list of things that will come out of a good meditation, or in a mastermind situation where other people hear your vision, hear what you would like, and then they answer the question, whatever pops into their head. It's like popcorn ideas, and they write them down, and then you go over it later, and you hear and you write down all the answers that they received, because somewhere in there is that one thing you could do today that would move you in the direction of your dreams. And you just need to do it a couple times to start to build momentum, because it's the momentum that makes us feel good about what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Um, and I'm sure there are lots of books and coaches, obviously,
Mm-hmm,
that can
mm-hmm.
help with all of that as well. Um, and we kind of talked about this already, but what particular struggles do you see that people are dealing with um, when they're first faced with this disaster, be it a job loss or a landslide coming through your back window? What are some commonalities that you see, like with the first thing that you're kind of faced with that is the challenge to meet and deal with?
I think the biggest struggle, aside from the financial hurdles and the safety, because if you're in a disaster of any kind, something has been lost, something has been torn out of your life. It may have greater or lesser impact in your outer world, but you feel it emotionally. And the struggle comes in the battlefield of the mind. I think that's a Joyce Meyer phrase. And she really does make a good case for how we fight this negative influence that keeps trying to insert itself into the situation over and over and over again. And that's a really, it's societal. We have a lack of focus. We focus on lack. We focus on no money. Oh, we got to go get credit for this, or won't be able to buy it. We're getting into debt. Oh no, now we're in too much debt. So there's we keep taking actions that actually create the problem, but we don't know how to stop and turn it around. And it's in that cycle that we struggle the most, as we keep telling ourselves the wrong things. We tell ourselves lies. And that's when we use the term paradigms.
Mm-hmm.
But that is what it is. They are lies we tell ourselves that stop us from progressing.
And so the vision and the renewing of your mind and the gaining the skill set you need and the taking right action, those are the things that are going to help with that.
Yes. And reading the Bible.
Mm.
It's or inspirational content, because it really does. You want to you want to not think about money as a problem. It's there are other solutions. There is a great phrase, God is the source of my supply. And when we are in that frame of reference, when we see that as real, that we just have to ask, and we will get the Rima that pulls us out of this problem. Everything changes, everything becomes better, and we are not immersed in the problem.
So I love this. I love the idea that you presented of that these disasters can be a new opportunity, and that there are actual steps that we can take to get into that mindset. So you have a free offer for everyone who's registered for this event that can help them in that. And tell us about that.
Well, it's a little book I wrote called The Survivor's Guide, 12 Tips to Gain Inner Peace. And it really talks about the very things you're going to go through, and what the cures are. The tips are about how you face it, how you deal with it. So I wrote it years ago, but it stands as true today as it did when I wrote it then. So it's a wonderfully supportive document just to refer to. I also do a podcast, Train Your Brain, Claim Your Power, which is a nice chance to read or to hear the things that other people have done. I do it for authors who are independently published, because they need, being from TV, they need to get on tape. They need somebody to be able to hear about it, or see them. And it's challenging to do that when you're not in the business, So I provide that service and give them a piece of digital content that they can then send to anyone. And if it helps them sell books and helps them find, some success in their field, yay team, I've done my job. But that's on Spotify for podcasters. And of course, the normal stuff, you can find me on YouTube. You can find me. I have one of my older podcasts is on iTunes still.
Oh, wow.
And it's called Rebuilding Your Life, Moving from Disaster to Prosperity. And so, you can also find that.
Yeah, nice. And you have an offer for our VIP subscribers as well. What's your part of that offer?
I think the best way to get to know somebody and see if you really resonate with them is to work with them. And so I'm offering a 30-minute laser coaching session in which we can just talk about whatever's going on in their life and see if we can come to some good ideas to apply for them right now, right where they are.
Nice. And I know you also have another program that you're starting soon. Tell us a little bit about that.
That one is fun. I was inspired to do it. I set out to do one program with a company called Forum.
Mm-hmm.
They create peer focus groups so that you can talk about whatever subject the facilitator is offering. And while we were doing our preparation, the fires broke out in Los Angeles. And suddenly I'm up front looking at all these people who have been going through disasters, real disasters, much more similar to my own than not. I said, let me shift my focus just a little bit to help them navigate the disasters that they have seen all around them, the loss of schools, the loss of churches, the loss of businesses, not to say just their own homes, or serious damage. It's a major lift for the entire community. Just to talk about disaster, talk about what we can do, and move from that horrible sense of destruction where you feel your world has completely collapsed. Move through that, past it, and get to a place where you are, you've survived and you are moving forward. And then how do you get beyond that? Because it isn't just about survival. It really is about being able to thrive. And so that's the journey. It covers most of the content I would offer in any of my courses. And I add a little bit more on the subject of money because it is such a big deal. Part of that is just the basics of finance and how to get out of debt and how to deal with this, but also funding
Mm.
because funding is something as a producer we're always faced with. How are we going to pay for this movie, film project, TV show that our heart is set on doing? And it's very similar when you're trying to find financing for anything. So it's a fun project.
And is that something too that even if, say, using the example of the fires in LA, even if it wasn't your house that was burned down, there's still such an impact on, those who still have their house, but it's their community. And so is this a group that would be helpful to them as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's because, as we talked at the top, comes in many shapes and sizes. And the sense of community is one of the critical components of getting well. Um, Connection,
Mm.
making connections with people. You're not by yourself in a disaster. You may feel like you are if you huddle at home or in your hotel room or wherever you found shelter. But the real essence of connecting with other people and who are sympathetic or going through the same thing is very important to your healing process. Uh, it's very lonely. It's very lonely to try to solve these problems on your own. If you have a faith-based life, so much the better, because that community will be very supportive. One of the very interesting things here in Los Angeles, Shepherd Church, which is a global media ministry, it's a little program called Lift Up Jesus. He has a congregation with satellite churches, so he's very involved. They have 5 churches altogether, and he immediately, when the fires hit, he found out 12 churches had been burned down and 2 synagogues, and they rallied around that to start providing funding to start rebuilding those churches. Mm. That's connection. That's finding the community and having the community support the others who've lost everything. So yes, learning how to do that, learning how to reach out, connect, support is really important.
Well, thank you so much, Susan. And now we get to my favorite question. What do you think, for you personally, your top 1, 2, or 3 aspects that are really integral to having a life that is really nourishing body and soul?
Well, as I guess there's one theme that runs through all of what I do, which is that you want to create a life on purpose. Mm. You want to retire on purpose. You don't want to just sit in the shack. You want to do something, be part of something. When you want to live on purpose, you want to be motivated and find joy in life. So that's probably the most important. And how do you do that? Well, for me, stay aligned with your inner being. So you're connected with source, you're connected with spirit at all times. Listening for inner guidance, very important to me. It's probably the one question, what's one thing you want me to think about today or do today? And be open to change. Be ready. Every single decade has brought me new experiences that I would not have had if I didn't live that long. So you want to explore opportunities that suddenly begin to present to you. And a cautionary tale, if you're waiting for heaven to come to earth, remember it starts right now where you are.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much, Susan. We appreciate everything that you've added to this conversation of creating a life that's intentional and one that really nourishes our body and soul. And be sure to tune in for more episodes to come. And if you haven't already purchased a VIP package and you're seeing all of these things that are available and decide you want to do that, it's not too late. Also, it's still not too late to invite more friends to attend so that they can be enriched and uplifted by these interviews as well. So, create a life that nourishes your body and soul.